back to Sister Sis.
Hey, we're back.
We know it's been a little while with the children going back out to school and everything. We just had to take a little step back temporarily. Today, we want to talk about something that's very important, something that's been on most social media, mainstream media, at the forefront of a lot of discussions recently. We want to talk about women's safety and women's experiences with advances that are untoward.
Yeah, so I mean, our last few shows have been a little bit light, a little bit gimmicky, talking about, different stuff, relationship stuff. Today we're going to just take it up a notch, and we just want to talk about quite a serious subject that affects us, that affects our sons and daughters, and it affects women globally. So yeah, we've been looking at the high profile case of
Sarah Everard.
Yeah, and how that has come about, the consequences or not so many consequences of perpetrators of these kind of heinous crimes. And it's just kind of highlighted to us that even though a crime that's gone, full scale like that, it's something that's always with females when they go about their day to day. I mean, not hopefully thinking about something as dreadful as that happening, but things from 0 to 100 on the scale of sexual assault. And that
I think there are a lot of talks that you have to have with your children when they're growing up. Obviously, you have talks about the birds and the bees. From people from a black background, you have to have children talk with your children about their safety and sort of confrontations with the police. As a mother of daughters, you also then have to have that extensive talk about their safety, not wearing headphones when they're by themselves, not having a hoodie up, kind of being aware of their surroundings, and sort of on the spot analysing of males in their presence, if they're walking down the street, if they're waiting at a bus stop. There are so many extra talks that have always had to happen that a lot of people are unaware of.
Yeah, and I think as women who maybe be single women, you're very aware of it, and some women do tend to try to counteract that and be very forceful or fearless and fierce about how they carry themselves, to not portray any weakness, to not attract certain masculine energies, or not even masculine energies, because that's just wrong.
Just to not show like a certain
vulnerability. Exactly. And I remember, like, my daughter is very much like how my mother was. They're very fearless. Like, my daughter, when she was 16, 17, would walk, where we live, quite secluded and, dark in the winter, and she would walk around, take shortcuts and walk around the park, and I was always so fearful of her doing that. And I literally could not wait for her to get her license to be able just to drive, because I knew she wouldn't stop going out as a young lady. When I could, I would drop her to places. But I remember when she was about 17, before she went off to uni and stuff, and I just remember calling her in to watch Crime Watch, just because I knew coming up, they show that what's going to happen.
Yes.
And there was a girl on the bus, she was followed on a night bus and then followed home and assaulted. And I remember just saying, she hated me doing that, but I couldn't see any other way to tell her there are dangers out there. And although in your head you're strong and you do this if you get attacked or approached, at the end of the day, you're a female. Your physical structure, your physical ability, you cannot fight off most men. I mean, unless you've got self-defense knowledge and some sort of martial art knowledge, you are really vulnerable out there.
And I don't want to take away from the fact that sexual assault and sort of abuse also happens to men. I think up until just last week, the Crime Watch that I think still does get aired, they showed a case of a gentleman getting off a train and being sexually abused, actually raped in the toilets at a train station. No one's been caught for this. So these things do happen. We're not saying it only happens to women.
Yeah, we're just saying this case is highlighted.
That all men are perpetrators. We're not saying all men are rapists. We're not saying all men have the potential to be rapists. But this is an issue that has to be
looked at.
Looked
It
at
has
by
to be
all.
looked at,
Yeah,
because
it's
I
not
mean,
a women's issue.
and it's not as easy as, you know, I think on the radio early on in the week, I was driving and listening to, they're saying, you know, when Jack the Ripper was out, what they did is they curfewed men, and men were not allowed to be on the street at a certain time. Like, that is a ridiculous type of way to go about looking at things, because I think in Scotland they have been actually speaking about introducing a curfew for men, but women, we're all part of the workforce. We're part of a 24-hour workforce in this country. So it's so unrealistic to curfew anyone in that way. And what do you gain from that?
But then with that being said, you can just forward think and see how tits up, sorry to speak, that would go. Because remove all the men from the street, women still have to go about their business. Yeah, those who have to sort of work, or they have to manoeuvre for loved ones or whatever in the evening, whatever they have to do. Remove all the men off the streets. How much safer would it be for women
be less
if
safe,
there are no men to call if anything was to happen?
Exactly.
Because you will still get men who are still out there. There are still people who live on the streets, unfortunately, don't have a TV. They won't know about any curfew. They will still be roaming, and there'll be nobody to
I also
protect.
think that, I mean, I remember saying about like 6 months into this situation we're in, the lockdown, saying that there is a lot of these cases that are going to happen. I would never imagine that it would be someone of that kind of authority, an officer of the law, you know, who would have portrayed such a heinous crime. I don't know why I wouldn't think it would be, but I mean, just having that kind of news coverage, that person being involved, and that poor family. And I think when the story first came out, I just thought, oh, how old is the female that was attacked? And when I heard her age, I just thought, there's nothing. She minded her business. I've heard different things. I've heard they knew each other and all sorts of things, but regardless that these things are happening all the time. I mean, recently in the area I live in, online, on the online news feed that we get, there has been so many attacks in local parks, daytime, evening,
on buses,
nighttime,
of young children,
on the
older
buses,
women, everything.
And I mean, I was saying to Charlie as well that, you know, so many times I've been in broad light, 8 o'clock in the morning, or before 8, packed train in the mornings, and people literally forcing themselves on you on a train. And what do you do about this? I mean, I turn around and just go like, you know, excuse me, or can you move away from me? Like literally, but it happens so often, and it's just like, why do these people think that they can get away with this?
And do you remember,
you know, there has to be more of a severe consequence to these abuses. You know, teenage girls on bus coming home from school, that, you know, their hands on them on the bus, and they're so afraid to tell the people in front of them, next to them, the bus driver, you know, why?
And there's this culture of not wanting to intervene. Yes, you have to think about preservation and your own life. But at the end of the day, if you can see that there is a child uncomfortable, a woman uncomfortable, if she looks like she's not supposed to be with that person, ask if she's okay. You know, go and assist if you have to. Imagine it could be your mum or your sister or your partner. What would you do if you could just put yourself in their situation, or think about it as your loved one? What would you do?
A young girl that was actually commended, and rightfully so, a few months back when
the young schoolgirl,
when a schoolgirl was being abducted really and being sexually assaulted, and she intervened, called her mum, you know, and got involved and actually stopped that carrying on. And hopefully, because of her intervention, other girls will not have to suffer at the hand of that particular person. But it's worrying, and I don't think that the people who make decisions understand the level of worry that some women, and a large majority of women, carry. That fear, the fear of when they said they were going to make bathrooms in most places unisex, the fear that struck me. Can you imagine being in the most vulnerable position of literally having your pants down on a loo, and there are men
or
and
different genders, orientations, everything,
and crazy levels of craziness that are going to be in that vicinity where you are at the most vulnerable, and you cannot control nature. Sometimes you have to go to the
and that's
toilet.
the thing. A lot of people that spoke up about that situation, it was seen as homophobic,
and
but
shut down.
actually, it was about safety.
How do
it was
you
about
send your
women's
girl
safety.
to the
Exactly.
toilet, to the bathroom? If you're at a restaurant, you say to your daughter,
but you're with
go
your
to the
younger
toilet.
male children. How do you then, you can't assist everything. So it was about reality. It was about looking at the safety of girls, of young children, and everything. A lot of what sometimes is objected or resisted against isn't always about homophobia or because of sexual orientation. Sometimes it's down to pure basic safety
and common sense.
Yeah.
Common sense, guys, because if more and more of these crimes are happening, more and more assault is being recorded and reported, and we know it's happening, and we know it's on the increase, especially
with the lockdown and sexual frustrations. Let's be honest, everyone has been separated. Everyone's been social distancing. There has been a lot of frustrations going on, and I think this is why one of the reasons why you said there'll probably be an increase of these crimes and of these incidents happening,
because all of the outlets that some of these people have. I mean, there are some people, it's kind of knowing there is normal preference and dating and all that frustration anyway, but then you do have the people who are sick, sick for better want of a word, and they've been pent up. There's nothing open, there's no other outlets that they may have had, so all of that. And then you have people going out for exercises and, children meeting up in places outdoors. It's really all a recipe for disaster. Yeah. And we're seeing it. We're seeing all of this happen. I don't have any of the answers, but I know these discussions have to be had because for the simple fact that it's on the increase, and where are the consequences? Why do we not see these consequences of these people when they get arrested? I mean, I know there were the death of 2 girls in a park which is quite close to us, or in a country park that is quite close to us, last year's summer, and the person who was arrested and trialed for that is pleading that he had nothing to do with it now, and everyone was kind of relieved. No, it was the worst type of attack ever on 2 young sisters, 2
celebrating
females.
a birthday on such a happy occasion, to then have their life cut short like that.
Completely cut short, and it was so tragic, and it affected all the females in that area, to be honest with you.
But then to then hear that police then took pictures with their bodies, again, the same service that came into question in the Sarah Everard case, the people who have taken an oath to protect and serve and don a uniform, unfortunately, are not always protecting and serving.
No, and there's
I think that's what's the
anyway.
fear. The people who you think, if anything was to happen to you, you would run to on the street or call, and now also the people that you have to be wary of and maybe needing protecting from. Where do we now stand in society? I think culturally, we also need to address certain things. We've had, I think for a long time, a rave culture where it's okay to just start whining behind a female, touch her, grab her in certain ways, try and bend her over without even looking at her face or asking or saying hello. I think it's also been the norm to crab past females when you so-called need to get by, and they can feel the whole of your intimate parts up against their intimate parts. I think sometimes it's necessary to get by, but other times, come on now. So I think there are times when
but I think that's in a space where that can be addressed. I think when
people are seen as the norm, then it becomes acceptable. So when does it not acceptable to hold a lady and pass and crab past your body?
Not in a club, when you're not, you're going to work, or you're jogging, or you're going shopping, or you're on a train or a bus. There's a certain amount. You go to a club. That shouldn't happen. Yeah. But you're going to, you may dance with people. There is dancing.
But then there's a fine line, because then you go on a date with someone, date rape happens, they could turn around and say, but you went in a closed confined space with someone in their home, and then that happened. There's a very fine line where if you say it's okay to happen in an environment, then you're saying it's okay.
I'm not saying it's okay.
But there's a blanket okay. I think if you go get dressed, you leave your house to go out for a night out with your friends, it may be expected, but you shouldn't have to put up with males touching you when you plan a night out. I don't think workplace, train, rave, anywhere, it's not acceptable to have people touching on your body without your say-so.
Definitely, but I do think the other extreme is when you're not you're not even in any sort of sexual contact. You're not dressed up. You're literally in your school uniform, or you're literally in your workout clothes. Like, I'm not saying clothes have anything to do with it anyway. It shouldn't have anything.
We're not saying that at all.
But at the same time, there's sometimes where it's a predator type thing. I know in all instances it's a predator, but sometimes I understand in a club men might think that. So
that's why we need to address it. It's not a women's issue. Okay, let's flip the script. Every rave we go into, women are slyly sliding past the men's genitalia. Excuse me. When does that become acceptable? It isn't. What, because they're men, it's always happened. Again, just because something has always happened doesn't mean it's okay.
No, definitely. But I know personally, like, if I go to a club, I can address that in a different way. I can say, like, what are you doing? Whereas, for example, I was going to, like, in this lockdown, in the evening, I'd come home and I'd want to go for a walk. And obviously it's winter time, it gets light, it gets dark quite early. And I was going for a walk and feeling quite good about going for a walk with one headphone in.
Okay, one
We're
out.
Still conscious,
still
aware of I cannot actually walk listening to my music in the dark by myself, just around the corner from my house. So I did this one night, and then I think I've told you that there's this person who's not mentally well, there's a few people who are not mentally well who just like literally walk around our local area, and this one person has a silhouette that you cannot deny. Like, he walks, his trousers down, so he walks like he's trying to hold his trousers up.
A waddle.
And literally, I went out and started my walk, and I saw his silhouette from down the road. And although, because just because he's mentally ill doesn't mean that he will attack a woman. In my head, I just felt so vulnerable. I literally turned back, I went back home, and I ordered a bicycle because I still need my exercise. Like, the gyms are not
get
open.
Away a lot quicker.
So the thought of actually putting myself in a vulnerable situation by walking around the corner from my house for a 10-minute walk, power walk, makes me vulnerable, puts myself at risk. It's amazing how not. Okay, I don't think everybody feels like the way I feel. I know sometimes I can be a bit over, but the fact that I am the age I am and I feel like that, I can't go and get the physical exercise I need because I just always feel.
Well, I don't think that's far-fetched, because when we were younger, where we lived in a different part of Harrow, we had a church and like a river on one side, and a park that was always open 24 hours a day, and the river on the other side. We had to get off the bus and somehow get past this church, get past this river, get past this park, home. I would run. I would literally just close my eyes, go in the middle of the road so I wasn't close, so nobody could grab me. These are the things that as a younger, maybe I should have been home before curfew, but also these are the things that young girls have to think about. I think
it's all, because it's always happened, people just say, it's always happened, but I don't think we should just accept that. I think the people who do this should be named and shamed. This register that people go on, and then they're allowed to be your
still
neighbour.
Live near schools, even though they say they're not. There are plenty of cases where people are living or around in places, even famous people lurking in schools that they shouldn't be in.
People who work in schools.
Children and women should not have to feel, even young boys should not have to feel that when you get around a corner you have to run, or you've got to hold your keys in your hand as a weapon, or you have to have everything ready in case you need to dart to your door.
Alarms. And I remember being once, I think I was about 16, 17, and this person was coming in to where I work of an evening. I used to finish quite late, and he was coming in regularly, and then, literally he started coming in just as I was finishing work, and I drove at the time, and the car park was quite dark. I used to park a little bit away from it. Luckily, I had a car, so I didn't have to think about that journey, but to get to the car park. And literally, I told work what was happening, and they said, you know what, we're going to have a look at the CCTV, and they provided me with an alarm. The alarm, it wouldn't be quick. If anything happened, the alarm would not be quick enough.
How many times do you
And how many people said to me, oh, what did you say to him? Did you? And I was like, hello, I'm in a line of customer services. All I did was say, good evening, and thank you. I may have smiled. Like, that doesn't warrant someone stalking you to the point you feel so vulnerable going to your place of work, you know. Like, I don't know how it can stop or if it can stop, but there needs to be more of a discussion so that the people who are not all there or think that way or don't see how they make people feel by their insinuations or their intentions, like, it needs to be more of a consequence.
As you said, it comes down to the ABCs, the antecedents. Why are these people doing this in the first place? What are the behaviours that are happening? And then see the consequences. As a young girl, young teenager, I remember going to South Harrow Station and someone saying, excuse me, and I remember I turned around where the fence was, and the next thing you know, I was being flashed. As a teenage girl, that was my first experience of having a man flash his genitalia. I ran downstairs in the station and tried to report it, and they said there's nothing we can do. Now,
to be fair, our own mother has told us about experiences she had back in Jamaica, and we've heard experiences of many women over the years. So where do you go? How do you go forward? Because this is something that has always happened. As much as testosterone has been around, this has been something
that's
that
why
happens.
I said we need to look at the ABCs. I think the consequences for these behaviours, regardless of the antecedents, the consequences aren't strict enough. When a lot of these cases, rape cases, assault cases on females, are brought to court, brought to the justice system, they're either thrown out for lack of evidence. A promiscuous past is brought into question. Just because somebody has a promiscuous past does not mean they deserve to be raped or assaulted. Just because somebody wore certain clothes or went to a nightclub or got separated from their friends doesn't warrant certain things. But the consequences for these perpetrators is not harsh enough to prevent this from happening. There's a lot of victim blaming. There's a lot of, you wore this, you got separated from your friends, why didn't you have your phone? Stop blaming the victim. Yes, everybody plays a part, but nobody on earth deserves to be abused, to be violated, to be murdered, to have any kind of behaviours that are unwarranted. We know there is mental health out there, so we know there are a lot of people that can't process things in the normal way. We know there are people that can't sort of, read behaviours in societal situations. We need to address this from all angles. And again, this is not just a women's problem. This is society's problem. This is a human problem.
It's a global problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so on that note, it's something to think about, and please have the discussion. There are petitions out, there are things to think about and things to bring forward. You know, there are scripts to be written, that this conversation needs to be involved, you know.
And regardless of whether the fact that cases are dropped or, you know, sometimes things are brought up, don't ever be silenced. If something happens to you, if you feel threatened, if you feel vulnerable, if you feel your safety is in question in any way, report it, speak to friends and families, let somebody know what's going on. I know over Christmas in certain countries with snow going on, women were posting that they had codes like 1F and things like that written outside their house. Very sad. It means single white female. So people know that if they attack that house, that there's a single female in there. Again, we need everybody to understand these symbols and signs and what's going on, to look out for ourselves, but for one another.
Okay, so sisters, look after sisters, and brothers, we need your help in this conversation, in this fight, in this struggle, and something that lives with us every single day. So think about your movements, your actions, and just have a conversation with a female first to make sure the way in which you're approaching them, the way in which you're going about things is acceptable, responsible,
and a consensual
way.
Yeah.
Sister, sis.
Love you. Bye.